Poppin Wilson of the Gym Blossoms live on the phone right now, holding up in New York City, up in Long Island, right?
That is correct. Andy, it's great to talk to you. I miss you, my friend. For people who don't know, Andy is my friend. We are friends, and we've known each other for a while, and it's great to chat with you in the middle of the apocalypse. How are you holding up? How is your family?
Oh, we're doing great, man. My parents are up in St. Louis holding up there, and then I'm just holding it down here in Nashville. And I got to be honest, man, I'm really thankful to have the job in radio that I have because, I mean, other than that, I don't think a lot of other places are open right now.
You're damn right. I was just thinking that moments ago. I was smoking some pot just a few seconds ago, and I was thinking, Andy's so lucky he's still working. You know, I don't get to work anytime soon, and I have no idea when I'll be able to again.
Yeah.
And you're very fortunate. So I'm glad you got the station to yourself. You're like what was her name? Adrienne Barbeau in John Carpenter's The Fog. Do you remember this movie?
Yeah, I do.
She's like a hot DJ, and like all these ghost pirate zombies are coming and invading the town, and she's on the air going, "Don't go in the fog." That's
exactly how I feel right now. But yeah, it is. But it is true, man. Like, you know, being the Gym Blossoms, you guys are a band that, I mean, how many dates a year do you guys do? You do quite a few.
Well, last year we did over 110 shows. So this year we're not going to do quite so many. We've only probably played fewer than 10 times this year. Oh, wow. And we really just have no idea when we're going to be back on tour again. And when everything does turn back on, every band in America is going to be competing for the same venues. So
yeah, that's a good point.
I just don't know how much room there's going to be. But I'm of the mind that a mid-price tour like ours is going to do really well. I doubt people are going to be filling stadiums for Taylor Swift if she's charging, $300 a ticket or something like that. But
absolutely,
a tour like ours, we're expecting to go out at some point with Bare Naked Ladies and Toad the Wet Sprocket, and I would think a mid-price tour with a shitload of hit songs would do very well in this situation. But of course, I've got no way to predict it, and it's my suspicion again that all of the bands who are on hold right now are all going to be fighting for the same venues when this all gets flipped on again. So we'll just have to see what happens.
Absolutely, because you guys were supposed to be here in Nashville next month. It was going to be April 14th. It was going to be at the brand new Brooklyn Bowl, and I know that was definitely one of the most anticipated shows coming up for April. So hopefully, I'm assuming things will get rescheduled, but you're right, there's going to be a lot of bands diving for those same venues.
Absolutely. I think there's a good chance that the Nashville date has already been rescheduled for sometime in the fall, but don't hold me to that. I know a couple of our dates have been rescheduled for the fall, but I'm not sure which ones.
Yeah.
But it's certainly possible that that's among them. So, let's keep our fingers crossed. We love coming to Nashville.
Oh, man, absolutely. We're talking to Poppin Wilson of the Gym Blossoms right now in the local Buzz. And also, I wanted to ask you, this is definitely probably the most, because you've been home now for about, is it 10 days, 12 days you've been inside your house, just like by yourself?
Actually, as of this afternoon, I've been in self-isolation for 14 days.
Is that the longest you've been at home in like that long of a time? That's a long time for someone who tours so much.
Yeah, it's very rare for me to be home or in any one place for 2 straight weeks. I've done it a few times in the last year where I've been home for more than that time. But, I was just informed a while ago, I believe the social distancing guidelines are going to be held in place until the end of April.
I just heard that.
So that's 4 weeks from now. So
wow.
I will have ended up spending a minimum of 6 weeks at home, and it's not like on May 1st all of a sudden I'm going to go back to work. I'm going to be here still, I imagine. So I'm looking down the pike at a long time at home, and I'm lucky. There's people out there with who have got it a lot tougher than me. I'm very fortunate that I have a whole home to myself.
Yeah.
I've got a beautiful recording studio, plenty to do around the house. I'm getting plenty of exercise. I've got food and supplies. My son and his mother are not far away, and They're healthy, so I have very little to complain about.
Absolutely, man. No, I love that. And I think one of the things I've noticed some bands are doing, you included, the live stream thing. What an interesting world that we live in now, where you can, like, imagine if this had happened even 10 years ago, you couldn't do a live stream like you can now. And you've been doing a lot of those live streams I've seen on your YouTube channel. And how is that? I mean, whose idea was that? First of all, was it your idea? Was it like a management thing? Because it's a really amazing thing. I've been watching every single one of them up here at the station.
Sure, there's lots of people doing it, and I'm very fortunate to be doing it. It was my idea. As soon as I knew that we had postponed our tour in April, I thought, well, then during those dates I'll do some live streaming. But as soon as I got home 2 weeks ago, I realized, like, the day I got home, that's when everything really shut down. It was a Monday 2 weeks ago. And that's when everything really changed, and I realized I needed to start doing the live stream thing, like, right away when everybody was holed up at home. And it's been something that I've enjoyed. It's been a very cathartic experience for me, especially the show I did on Friday night. That was a very cathartic experience for me, and I've been enjoying it. So I'm lucky to be like I say, I'm lucky to have my studio. And a few weeks ago, I had been traveling. I was in Arizona, and I went to my storage room, and I shipped myself a couple of huge boxes full of old cassettes, which include a lot of unreleased Gin Blossoms material and just a ton of other stuff. So I had a feeling I was going to be stuck at home, and I have at home a beautiful cassette 4-track. So I wanted to ship myself all these cassettes so I would have the opportunity to dump it all into the digital realm and be able to share it during this time that I knew we were not going to be able to go out and play.
Yeah.
So that's what I did on Friday night. I debuted a whole bunch of classic, unreleased, totally forgotten Gin Blossom songs that I had dug up on cassette. And as I said, it was a pretty emotional experience for me, and it was a hell of a lot of fun.
And I watched that live. I was actually up here and I was watching you do it, man. And I definitely noticed, like, even the look on your face when you were playing some of this stuff, because the fans were freaking out on the chat, on the YouTube chat. But, like, the look on your face, it literally looked like you were having, like, flashbacks to it. And how was that playing some of those songs? Because some of those songs were from, like, 1989, right?
Yeah, a lot of it went back to 89, 90, and 91. To answer your question, how was it? It was pretty intense. I had spent a lot of time last week kind of organizing the cassettes, but I hadn't really listened to a lot of it yet.
Yeah.
And last Friday afternoon, I realized, well, I'm going to be playing some stuff tonight. I better get into this and start to catalog it. And it was that afternoon that I was hearing all of this stuff that I had completely forgotten about, and it was just pouring over me. And by the time I hit the air on Friday night, I had eaten some marijuana edibles, and I was drinking bourbon, and I caught myself a really good buzz, and I just stared into the abyss and played all this forgotten music. And it was a pretty intense and authentic experience. People got to really watch me kind of go through something.
Yeah.
And no bullshit, it was pretty intense. But I'm glad I did it, and it was a lot of fun. It was a very cathartic and healing experience, and I was able to debut a bunch of great music that was totally forgotten. So, anybody who's listening and wants to check it out, you can find all my live streams on the Gin Blossoms official YouTube channel.
Right on, man. Yeah, it was definitely something to watch. I remember thinking like this is genuinely him going through something and hearing these songs for the first time in a while. And you have a new one coming up where you're going to premiere. Those of you who don't know out there and that are listening to Radioland, after the Gin Blossoms split in '97, Robin started a new band with the original drummer Phil Rhodes called the Gas Giants, which is another band that I'm a massive fan of as well. I think I've told you that in the past, man. But you are going to premiere some Gas Giant stuff on your next live stream. Is that true?
That is true. I've been working really hard. Actually, I've been planning this for months now, where I've been remastering the Gas Giants record and also the other album that I put out in those days from the Poppin Wheelies.
Yeah.
And so I've been in the process of getting this stuff ready, and it's all coming together now. So later this week, I'll be able to premiere the Gas Giants record, which is called From Beyond the Back Burner. And it was originally released in 1999 and been largely forgotten and gone sort of unnoticed. And I'm finally ready to re-release it, and I'm going to have it available on Spotify and iTunes and all of the other likely services. So I just before you called, I was in the process of beginning that. There's a service called TuneCore where independent bands can pay them to place all of their music at all the streaming services and iTunes and Apple Music and Spotify and all those things. So I'm going to be making the Gas Giants and the Poppin Wheelies records available on all those services later this week, and then I'll do one of these live streams and we'll debut a bunch of videos that I've made for both of those projects. So
that's amazing.
It's been a lot of work, and I've just been marching down memory lane, reliving all this stuff, not just the Gin Blossoms, but reliving my experience with Gas Giants. And we were a really good band. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it. We were a good band, and we made a great record. But 1999 was a really screwed up time in rock and roll, and it was really difficult. We weren't able to break the record. It did really well in a couple of markets. Like we had a hit song in Chicago, and we had a sold out show on a Friday night in Chicago, and things were really starting to move along. And we had a single at the time called Quitter.
Yeah.
And Quitter, made some impact. It was on some movie soundtrack. I can't remember what. And it got on the radio in different markets around the country, but ultimately our record company wasn't able to pull it off. And they just didn't have the marketing reach to make it a national hit. But we came really, really, really close. And eventually we just kind of called it quits because, being in a band is tough, and the Gas Giants ended up falling apart for a lot of the same reasons that the Gin Blossoms had broken up for. And anyway, also right around that time, I did the Poppin Wheelies record, which was a concept album, but it's my attempt to create an animated television series about a rock and roll band in outer space.
I love this. I remember the spaceship had a trailer for their gear. I remember seeing that when you showed it to us back in the day.
Yeah, that was one of the key design features I baked into the band. The basic premise is it's Scooby-Doo meets the Monkees in outer space, So, this garage band is on tour in the galaxy, and every week they're on a different planet, and they're fighting against robots and kaiju, and then they do a concert, So,
I love
right now it's a really good time to be pitching the project, and I'm just later this week I'm going to have all the material ready to pitch the Poppin Wheelies to Netflix and Amazon and Cartoon Network and everybody else. So I'm really excited to be able to not only make these records available, but also take the next step with the Poppin Wheelies and attempt to actually get it turned into a TV series.
Absolutely. And I like how you're taking this time at home to really work on some stuff. A lot of people are just kind of sitting around and day drinking all day, but you seem like you're really doing some stuff, man. I love that.
Yeah, I am day drinking too, but I'm in a position to also work on these things. And as I said, I was already headed in this direction. I would have been ready to launch the Gas Giants and Poppin Wheelies sometime around now, regardless of the apocalypse that we're all living through right now. I was already working on this for like the last 3 months. So
Okay.
I had the records remastered, and I have a guy who I make videos with, and I've gotten him all the artwork, and we're putting together official YouTube videos for all these songs, and all of that's just started to come together over the last few weeks. So fortunately for me, I'm in a position to work on it, and the guy who makes my videos, he can work from home. So we're getting a lot done.
Yeah, I love that, man. You know what's funny about the Gas Giants? I may have told you this story before back in the touring days and stuff, but the Gas Giants, I worked at a movie theater in the summer of 2000. I was in high school, and this was before cell phones and Shazam and all these things. And I remember I would clean the movie theater after the movies, and the movie you're thinking of was a movie called Boys and Girls. It had the 90s heartthrob Freddie Prinze Jr. in it. And I remember,
all right.
And I remember I'd be cleaning up the theater every night, and I would hear this song, and I'd go, "This sounds like Gin Blossoms," and I had no way to look it up. And it wasn't until years later, meeting you and playing shows with you, that I realized that was the Gas Giants.
Oh my God, that is so cool!
Yeah.
I don't remember that story, but that's really great. Well, like I said, we had a couple of moments where we dipped our toes into the mainstream, but that was a rough time for rock and roll. In 1999, like the only rock bands on tour or on the charts were like Filter and what was that other band? Fuel.
Oh,
Fuel
yeah,
was
yeah.
Another band, and they were and the biggest rock band at the time was Limp Bizkit.
Yeah.
But most of what was happening that year was stuff like Britney Spears and NSYNC, and all of that pop stuff was inundating, and it was really a hard time to break a rock and roll band. Really difficult. So.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And were you guys
But
frustrated?
I'm glad you got it. I sent you a couple of tracks earlier.
Yeah.
And when I was working on the Gas Giants, I wanted it to be different from Gin Blossoms. It was my intention for it to be more of a hard rock band and a little bit more concept driven. Like I was shooting for something kind of like a cross between Foo Fighters, Smashing Pumpkins, and Muse.
Yeah, okay.
There were some science fiction elements to it, and I definitely wanted it to be more of a hard rock, high concept kind of thing, and it was easy. It's not like I had to step outside myself. This kind of music is in my wheelhouse anyway, so I just kind of had to aim in that direction. So the tracks I sent to you were kind of the two definitive Gas Giants tunes.
Yeah, it looks like I've got Now the Change and I've got Quitter.
What's that, Andy?
It looks like I've got Now the Change and Quitter. You sent me both of those.
Yeah, Quitter was the single, and as I said, it got on the radio in a few markets. Now the Change was meant to be the second single, and it never got released. The label sort of fell apart before we got to release that as a single.
Yeah.
But that Now the Change is what I always considered the definitive Gas Giants song. It's really what I was shooting for, and it has elements of the Cars and Cheap Trick and Queen and the stuff that really kind of are my foundations as a songwriter. So I'm excited you're going to play it on the radio tonight. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, man, we're going to do them both back to back. We're going to play Now the Change and then the Quitter. And I wanted to ask you too, real quick, man. At 1999, you put out the Gas Giants album. Were you guys disappointed because the Gin Blossoms were so big in the 90s, and then you put out the Gas Giants and it didn't go so well? Was that kind of a humbling experience, or was it a negative experience for all you guys?
It was both humbling and negative, but it was, it's not anything I would take back. I'm really proud of what we did, and the music speaks for itself. It was a very difficult experience because, again, as you say, Gin Blossoms were really huge, and so I had to take a big sort of step down, and, I was loading my own gear that whole year, and I was really kind of tour managing the band in a lot of ways, and I was funding a lot of it, but we're really lucky because Gas Giants signed a huge recording contract with A&M Records. So since I had all that credibility as a Gin Blossoms, A&M signed Gas Giants for a big fat check, like almost 4 times what the Gin Blossoms got signed for.
Oh, wow. So
I had plenty of money to build my studio and hire the artist I wanted for the album cover and all that sort of stuff. And, we bought a Sega Genesis for the studio, and we put a satellite dish and bought the basketball package. So, we were living pretty large for a while, and then we made the record, and what happened was we were signed to A&M. We made the record for A&M, but then as soon as we turned it in and was fully mastered, A&M merged with Geffen and Interscope. And a lot of people who were working in the music industry in the late 90s will remember when all these mergers started happening, and we were a part of one of the first real big ones. So A&M got merged with Interscope and Geffen, and what happened was our album sat on a shelf for almost a year while they decided who was going to run the whole thing. And there was a chance that the president of A&M was going to get the gig. So of course, were holding out that, Al would get the job and run the whole show. But what ended up happening was the whole thing went to Interscope. And so our record sat on the shelf for a year, and then we were dropped by Jimmy Iovine, along with 300 other bands. On one day, like 300 bands got dropped from this merger of Geffen, Interscope, and A&M. And we were one of the 300 bands that were suddenly without a recording contract. So nobody was signing bands,
Yeah.
There was this glut of talent that were all looking for deals, and it was a pretty rough time. So we were lucky to find an independent label called Atomic Pop that put the album out. And Atomic Pop had a lot of money behind it. They were one of the first internet-based labels that was offering MP3 downloads, and they didn't have a lot of artists. They only had 3 artists on the label, and this is one of the coolest things I ever get to say. The only other artists that were the 3 artists that Atomic Pop had were Gas Giants, Ice-T, and Public Enemy.
No way.
So we were fantastic company, and we had the entire focus of the label, and it sort of worked for a while, but then they just kind of dropped the ball.
Yeah.
So we had a hit song on the radio in Chicago, and we went to Chicago and we did a sold-out show on a Friday night at the Park West. It was such a big night for Gas Giants. And then what happened was the label hadn't shipped any records to Chicago. So we were getting 55 spins a week on this one station in Chicago. We did a sold-out show. Our sales had been going up every week for a month. And then the week after we went to Chicago for this gig, sales plummeted.
Oh, wow.
And I remember calling the label and saying, "You guys don't have records in Chicago, do you?" And they're like, "Yeah, we kind of up." And I felt like somebody punched me in the gut because I had laid everything on the line for Gas Giants, and we had come so close to having a hit record in the city of Chicago, and the label blew it.
Oh, wow.
It was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Absolutely heartbreaking. You can hear the anguish in my voice, I'm sure. I will never forget this moment where the label was like, "Yeah, we screwed up," And
man.
Anyway, it's been all this time, and now you get to play a couple of those songs, and I'm excited for you to play the Poppin Wheelies too. And just so you know, the Poppin Wheelies song I sent you was by Tommy Keene, who was always one of my biggest influences, a great songwriter.
Yeah.
And a huge hero of mine. And so when I did the Poppin Wheelies record, I wrote 6 of the songs, and then I did a handful of cover songs, 3 of which were by Tommy Keene. So what you're going to hear tonight is a Tommy Keene song, and I actually brought Scotty Johnson into the studio, and he was in the Peacemakers at the time.
Oh, okay.
So people who don't know, Scotty Johnson's a guitar player for the Jim Blossoms, and the Peacemakers are one of the biggest bands in the Southwest.
Yeah.
Scotty was a founding member. He just got inducted to the Arizona Hall of Fame.
Oh, amazing.
As a member of the Peacemakers last summer. So during that time, I brought Scotty into the studio, and he played lead guitar on the song that you're gonna play tonight, called "Places That Are Gone." So anyway, there's so much. There's so much to tell you about all this. There's so many layers to it. But I know I can't take up your whole show, and I'm planning to do one of my live streams sometime later this week where I'll tell the entire story of Gas Giants and Poppin Wheelies, and I'll make all that music available to everybody.
Oh, man. And I can't wait to hear it, man. And I appreciate you taking the time to call in. I know everybody's quarantined, and when you were doing your live streams, I kept thinking what a perfect opportunity to have Robin call into the show, because everyone's kind of quarantined and doing live streams, and yours are ones that I've been watching. So it's just cool to be able to catch up with you, man, and have you on the show. And I'm really stoked to play the stuff. I mean, obviously, like you said in the beginning, Robin and I go back almost 15 years now, which is crazy to think, but I was obviously a fan before I met you. So it's always an honor to get to play your stuff on the show, man. It really, truly is.
Well, it's great to know you, Andy. You're one of my favorite people, and I'm my heart is with you and everybody in Nashville, and my best wishes to your parents and all of your former bandmates in One Lone Car. If you speak to any of them, let them know I said hello.
For sure.
I'm glad you're still, rocking in the free world. Keep it going and rock away.
Yeah, you too, man. And let us know whenever. I'll keep everyone up to date too whenever the Jim Blossoms Brooklyn Bowl show gets announced as far as the rescheduled date. But you guys stay safe, and hope we'll be seeing you guys on stage again soon, my friend.
Great, you bet, Andy. Anytime. Let's do this again next week if you can't find anybody bigger than me to talk to.
I would love that.
You can always call me back.
I would love that, man. Check out the Jim Blossoms live stream at the YouTube Jim Blossoms official page. And Robin, we'll talk to you soon, man.
Thanks, Andy. You take it easy, pal.
Yeah, you too, man.